Hello, everyone. Welcome to Baseball Sim Auctions. In today's video, I'd like to show you the process for conducting a baseball sim auction from beginning to end. So in essence, I want to show you what the entire procedure is all about and the challenge that you can have with it and the fun that you can have conducting a sim auction as well. So at Baseball Sim Auctions, we deconstruct historical baseball teams then we build brand new teams via an auction. Every participant, we call them the sim auction general managers, will have 260 sim dollars, not real money, virtual money, to purchase 26 players and create brand new teams. So in this video, I'll explain the process, as I said, from beginning to end. After the auction, we use the APBA Computer Baseball game to conduct what we call the Sim Auction World Series. We simulate entire seasons. Each season counts as a game. The team that wins 4 seasons wins the World Series. You can check out my other videos to view the actual auction process and the World Series results. The first step is to decide how many participants, in other words, sim GMs, will be in the auction, and what teams will want to deconstruct. In other words, what teams will want to take all the players and make them free agents. The APBA game has all the historical seasons available, so the combinations that you can come up with are really endless. Pick a favorite team, pick 2 of their best seasons, or pick individually great seasons from some of your favorite players. And from that point, you have the makings or the start of a great sim auction. In the following examples, I'm going to assume that there are just 2 sim GMs, and we will be deconstructing 2 historical teams. In essence, like I said, making all the players free agents and then building 2 brand new teams via an auction. So I think what I want to do is just go over some basic rules. Every owner starts the sim auction, like I said, with 260 sim dollars. Minimum bids are $1. In a 162 game season, you must purchase a minimum of 1,375 innings. And really, you should be closer to 1,450 innings, which is more or less what you would accumulate in an entire season. And we wanted to impose a minimum innings limit because you want to get realistic results. And if you have anything less than 1,375 innings, you're basically going to be pitching very tired pitchers, which could skew the results in one direction or the other. You must cover all your positions. A player must have played 10 games at a position to be purchased for that position. If a player only played 5 games at a position, he can be purchased to play that slot, that position, as long as you also purchase another player with 5 or more games played at that position. To ensure all positions can be adequately covered in every auction, a small number of bad hitters will be added for positional flexibility. All these hitters will have an OPS below 600 and will be selected from other teams in the years being used for the auction. So if, for example, in a 2-man and a 2 GM auction, we'll probably sprinkle in 6 or 7 bad hitters from, again, the years that we're using for those auctions, again, to give us that extra positional flexibility. A similar approach is followed with pitchers. For example, in a 2-team sim auction, 2 or 3 bad pitchers will be added to ensure the innings threshold can be comfortably met. These pitchers will typically have an ERA of 550 and above. So again, not any pitchers that will tip the balance in any direction positively. On the other hand, it'll probably, if you end up with one of those pitchers, it'll end up hurting you. You can find more detailed rules at my website at baseballsimauctions.com. But this will give you the gist of the simple rules that we have in place to start. So for this example, we will deconstruct the 1941 Red Sox featuring Ted Williams' historic 401 season, 406 batting average season. And we will match up that 41 team with the 1999 Red Sox, featuring one of the best seasons in the career of Pedro Martinez. Definitely one of the top two seasons. You can argue whether it's the best or not, but it definitely is one of the top two seasons. And if you notice, the teams that we picked, the 41 and 99 versions of the Red Sox, if you look up their records, the 1941 Red Sox won 84 games, the 1999 Red Sox won 94 games. So you wouldn't classify them as dominant teams, but the real attraction of those two teams was that the stellar seasons of those two players, of Ted Williams and Pedro Martinez. And obviously that's one of the attractions of the auction. You want to see how some of these great players and how some of their great seasons would translate into an auction where you're constructing brand new teams. Once the teams are selected, each SimGM receives an Excel file of all the players that will be available at the auction. This will give you an example of the file that I send to every participant. So this way everybody's on the same page, everyone knows the players that will be available during the auction. Now that the teams are selected, we must decide how we'll conduct the auction. So we have two options. A live auction, which is conducted via a Zoom meeting, or an auction via the Baseball Sim Auctions website. Zoom auctions are ideal for 2 to 4 SimGMs and will take between 1.5 to 3.5 hours. It depends on how much bidding is taking place, obviously. So the amount of time will vary depending on the participants, but you can definitely conduct a 4-person sim auction in between 3 and 3.5 hours. Now, auctions conducted on the website are what we call slow auctions. They're conducted over a period of several days and are ideal for larger groups, 5 or more GMs. So perfect for anyone who wants a daily dose of baseball while working from home or in an office environment. Now, typically, just to give you an example, if you have, say, 6 SimGMs conducting a slow auction, there's different ways that you can conduct it depending on the availability of the participants. But one of the models that we followed is, for example, auctioning off a player every hour from 10 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon from Monday to Friday. So in that type of a scenario, a 6-person auction would take about 2 weeks to complete. So it's ideal, again, for folks that have availability to actually, so folks that are not traveling as part of their job. So for Zoom auctions, each SimGM will alternate nominating players. A timer is set up for 9 seconds and will be reset every time there is a bid. When the bidding stops, the SimGM is awarded the player, and the player is logged on the auction Excel spreadsheet. So here I'd like to show you an example of the auction stopwatch in action. So essentially what will happen is one of the SimGMs will bring up a player for auction. So for this example, we'll bring up Ted Williams. So let's just assume that I am the SimGM that is nominating Ted Williams for auction. So I'll open up the bidding on Ted Williams, say, for $15. Once I do that, I'll start the stopwatch. Assume my opponent says $20. I stop the stopwatch and make another bid, or rather, I keep the stopwatch going, and then I make a bid for 20. My opponent says 21, stopwatch begins again. I say 22, the stopwatch begins again. So every time there's a bid, the stopwatch starts brand new. 23. So you get a fresh 9 seconds after every bid. Let's just assume the bidding is now up to $35. My opponent says 36, and I'll say 37. Again, fresh 9 seconds every time that you have a new bid. At some point, the bidding will get high enough where one of the owners decides that it's too high. Let's say we're at Ted Williams now for $45. My opponent doesn't want to go any higher, and I am awarded the player. So that gives you an idea of how the process works. It's a back and forth bidding process. Every new bid creates a brand new 9-second timer. The next point to bring up is, as players are purchased, the information is tracked via an Excel spreadsheet visible to all the participants. So you'll have, essentially, the process will be an alternating process from the timer, the auction timer, to the auction tracking spreadsheet. So this particular spreadsheet that I'm sharing with you is from a recently completed auction between the 1941 Red Sox and the 1999 Red Sox. So the visibility to the auction, to the evolution of the auction, is always visible to all the participants via the spreadsheet. Auctions conducted on the Baseball Sim Auctions website can be accessed via the Live Auctions or Future Auctions tab on the menu or the sidebar. Auctions via the website are conducted over a period of several days, as I mentioned before, and obviously it varies depending on the number of participants. Now, one of the cool features that's built into the auction software is there is an anti-sniping feature that extends the auctions 15 seconds if bids are received within the last 15 seconds. Now, this happens repeatedly until there are no more bids. Now, the value of this is that you could have a situation where anybody familiar with eBay bids would know this as well. Someone could wait till the very last second to make a bid, and if you intended to bid on that player at some point, you might lose out on that player. So this anti-sniping feature prohibits getting a player with a very last second bid. So it's a very helpful feature. So here you'll see the results of a recent auction that we conducted again between the 1941 Red Sox and the 1999 Red Sox. And as I mentioned before, you can see that the spreadsheet that we utilize tracks the lot numbers, the owner purchasing the player, the amounts paid, and the player in the position. So really all the information that you need to track your team. Now, obviously, most owners will have their own tracking spreadsheet as well, but the most common necessary information, such as prices paid and the lot numbers, players that are remaining to be bid on, how many players have been acquired, all that information is accessible to both owners as we go along. So here you can get a glimpse of Steve's team here. Steve purchased quite a bit of hitting. Now, the impact to that was that although he was able to buy some nice starting pitching, some of that spending on hitting impacted his ability to create a decent bullpen. So a lot of the bullpen arms that he was able to purchase were all $1 players and not really quality pitchers, which ended up being probably the main reason that this club didn't perform as well as my team. So the next slide shows you what my team looked like. Now, I went in a different direction. I purchased the two big stars, Pedro Martinez and Ted Williams. Now, that doesn't always work. if you allocate too many resources to one or two or three players, you could be left short to fill out the rest of your team. In this particular instance, I was able to spend heavy on the two hitters and was still able to buy enough complementary hitters to help Ted Williams in the hitting department. And then the big advantage for me was I was able to purchase some decent back end of the rotation and relief pieces, which really helped my team to come out ahead in the battle with Steve's team. So once the auctions are complete, each team submits their lineups and pitching rotations. Additionally, each team selects a computer manager to manage their team. The computer managers do an excellent job, and really there are many to choose from. They all have slightly different tendencies and attributes. Once I've recorded all this information, we're ready for the simulations. Now, one of the attractions of sim auctions, and I'll mention this again towards the end, is you don't have to allocate a lot of time. APBA is an extremely popular program. There are many leagues that you can join. There are tournaments that you can play, but all that requires, a pretty significant allotment of time. Like, for example, if you're involved in playing a league, you're playing out a season over a span of 4 to 6 months. And you need to play out each of those games. So when you're at home, you need to play those games against your opponent. You being the manager of your team, your opponent would have a computer manager. And then when the teams are on the road, your opponent would be the manager, and your team would use a computer manager. The point is, it drags out, and not everybody has that type of a time allotment. A sim auction, again, two owners, two sim GMs, you can get a sim auction done in an hour and a half, and then you can go on and do another one. So you have more varied enjoyment, and you can do it at your own pace, as opposed to the commitment that you'd have to allot if you were involved in a league play, or if you were recreating an entire season. Again, time is the one thing that we don't have a unlimited supply of. So the sim auction allows you to really allocate your time in the best way possible to get the most enjoyment out of it, out of the APBA computer game. A follow-up Zoom meeting is scheduled after the auction, and after I have all the lineups and rotation information in, and the proper computer manager selected. So a follow-up meeting is scheduled where entire seasons are simulated using the APBA computer game. The program is pretty powerful. It can simulate entire seasons between two teams in a matter of minutes. The team who wins 4 seasons wins the Sim Auction World Series. Now, the reason we decided to do entire seasons as the determining factor for the best team is there's a lot of inherent randomness in baseball, and you don't notice it necessarily from game to game, but in the span of a season, there's a ton of randomness. So I felt that the best way to determine the best team would be to simulate multiple seasons. So generally, and this is just based on the many sim auctions that I've done, whoever ends up winning 4 seasons truly is the best team. And that's why we've taken that type of an approach. So what I'd like to do next is show you, just to give you a sense of how quickly the APBA computer game can simulate the seasons. I'm going to go ahead and simulate a season using the same example that I used in all the information I've been referencing. So it'll be an auction that was recently completed, and it involves the 1941 Red Sox and the 1999 Red Sox players. So as you can see, I started on this screen, and I'm going to switch to a different screen in a second, but you can see how quickly these games were simulated, almost in a matter of seconds. So in this screen, you can see, you can get a better visual of how quickly the games are being simulated. The APBA game comes with a few backgrounds for stadiums, and you can purchase for $5 basically all the backgrounds, $5 per background, per stadium background. So you can have all the backgrounds for all the stadiums. This happens to be one of my favorites, of the Polo Ground. So I use this quite a bit as I'm simulating games. But you can see just how quickly all the action is happening. And all these games are just being simulated one after the other. So now that the simulation is over, we're going to take a look at the final standings. So the first thing I like to do is just make sure there's no rainouts, and there don't appear to be any rainouts in the simulation. So let's go to the report that gives us the final standings. And you can see that the final standings here are my team wins 86 games and Steve's team wins 76 games. So again, if this was, for example, the first season in our World Series, my team at this point would lead 1-0 because I would have won the first season. And then what we do is we set all the stats to 0, and we run the second season in the same manner as we did the first season. And then the first team that wins 4 seasons is the one that wins the World Series. So after each season is simulated, the statistics are reviewed and saved. Well, take a look at those Pedro Martinez stats. This is, again, one of the seasons from the example that I've been using, from the 1941 Red Sox and 99 Red Sox. So Pedro Martinez, who I ended up paying $53 for at the auction, really was worth every dollar. 26-4, 1.55 ERA, phenomenal. So the box scores of significant games are also reviewed. In this example that I've cited, you have 2 interesting games. We have one where Ted Williams hits 2 homers and drives in 8 runs, and in the other you have the box score of a brilliant performance from Pedro Martinez, pitching a shutout and striking out 13 batters. So this gives you an idea of what the box scores look like. So every season that is simulated generates a complete array of statistics, and you can see there's box scores for every game as well. So after every winner is decided, I send each participant a full summary of the results. And the statistical summary that I send out includes the World Series results. So in this particular example, you can see that my team won 4 seasons in a row, so I ended up winning the World Series 4-0. I also like to include run differential, because that's really, in my mind, the determining factor of who the better team was. You know, there can be, even in 4 seasons, you can have a lot of luck and randomness involved. So you might end up having a situation where a team wins the World Series, but they're not necessarily dominant in run differential. And it's kind of nice to see that. So that gives you an idea of whether you purchased a good team and just didn't have luck on your side, or whether you truly were an absolutely dominant team. And run differential gives you that information. And then again, I break down every season, home and away, 1-run victories, extra inning victories, all that type of information. The pitching stats are also included for all seasons. In the file that I send out, I do quite a bit of sorting. So I report on the top 5 pitching seasons, top 5 hitting seasons, all the hitting stats that you can imagine, And I do sort hitters as well by top 10 also. So the question is, so why play sim auctions? Well, I just put up a couple of things here that, that I thought of if someone other than me had created this, like what would be a good reason for me to be part of this, to participate in the sim auction? Well, if you think you know the pieces, the elements that are required to build an excellent baseball team, sim auctions offers you a way to test your theories, to test your assumptions. It's fun and it's challenging. In an auction, you can acquire, any player that you want if you're willing to pay the price. If you've ever played in a fantasy baseball auction, you have an idea of what that type of excitement is, where you're bidding on a player and you're not sure at what point to back out of the bidding or continue bidding. Auctions are tremendously exciting. Compared to a draft, the huge benefit is that you can get any player you want as long as you're willing to pay the price. In a draft, if the player before you, if the owner before you chooses a player that you had your eye on, that's it. You're out of luck. So it's a lot more challenging than just simply making a choice when your draft position comes up. Live sim auctions do not, as I mentioned a few times, do not require a huge commitment of time. In a few hours, you can find out who created the best team, really, which allows you to sample more combinations of teams. If you're playing in a APBA league, you're kind of locked in for 4 or 5 months or more to just whatever team you happen to have. Sim auctions allows you to build, really challenges you to build your own valuation system. How much do you want to pay for hitters? Deciding how much to pay for pitchers. I mean, baseball has always been, there's always been sort of a mystique about what exactly is more important in baseball. Is it pitching? Is it hitting? Well, guess what? You can decide that on every sim auction. You can decide based on the available players for auction, how are you going to allocate those dollars and decide, is it going to be 50-50 in terms of the pitching and hitting allocation? Or is it going to be something else in between, 60-40, 65-35, whatever? But it's on you to make those determinations. And that, that responsibility is fun, to actually come up with that formula yourself. When you play in fantasy baseball auctions, you can buy the software that'll guide you to whatever you should be bidding on these players. You can't do that with sim auctions. You have to decide that all on your own. And that's a fun and challenging piece of this process. So unlike fantasy baseball auctions, you're bidding on actual stats, not projected stats. So you can have as good a valuation system in fantasy baseball as you think you could, whether it's constructed by you or purchased commercially. But at the end of the day, the players might not perform. They're human beings. There might be things going on in their lives that impact their performance on the field, or they might get hurt. So when you're bidding on projected stats, you really never know what's going to happen. Here, you're bidding on actual stats. So you have perfect information. So in essence, a sim auction is a little bit like a chess game. You know what the pieces, aka players, can do. The question is, how do you play? In other words, when do you nominate? How much do you pay for the pieces during the auction? And lastly, the menu is huge. Every season in team and baseball history, starting in 1901, is available. So the combinations, as I mentioned, are endless. So please check out my other videos. I created this particular video to show you the entire process in action. If you hadn't played in a sim auction before, you'll be able to see in some of the other videos the process in action during an actual auction, and view the results as well in other videos of the World Series simulations. And please check out my website for articles, past auctions, statistics, all that good stuff at baseballsimauctions.com. And there you can also subscribe to my newsletter to find out about future auctions. Hopefully, at some point in the future, I'd love to see you on one of the auctions. If you have questions or would like to participate in a sim auction, you can, of course, contact me at baseballsimauctions@yahoo.com. And finally, I did want to mention I'm not affiliated with the APBA company in any way, but obviously I'm a big fan. Besides the computer game that I use to conduct the sim auction simulations, they also sell the iconic baseball board game played with cards and dice. And you can also play APBA online via apbago.com. I added all the relevant links on the About tab of my YouTube channel, so please check it out. All right, everyone, that pretty much sums up this video. I hope you found it instructive. And again, check out my other videos so you can get a little bit more insight on the sim auctions. And I'll be posting some additional videos soon, so please be on the lookout for them. Until then, take care.